And our third and final segment for this week's edition of the Rolling Stone comes to us courtesy of Twitter, that great mud puddle in the social media world. You can't live with it and you can't live without it, I'm going to tell you. But this comes to us from a tweet that was sent. It was tweeted out April 6th. Okay, I did not see this originally when it came out on April 6th, but it was shared by, I think it was Dr. James Lindsay, who I follow on Twitter. By the way, you actually should all be following James Lindsay because he's a brilliant mind to be following on Twitter. One of the reasons why I actually still stay on the platform, to be perfectly honest. He's one of the reasons. But the person who tweeted this out, okay, unsubtly, his name on Twitter, not his handle, but his name, is "All doctors are bastards." Okay, and I just want to read this to you. It was a small thread of 3 tweets. Okay, and this is what he said. This is what "All doctors are bastards" tweeted out on April 6th. It's time for disabled and sick people to seize the means of medical gatekeeping and control and transform it into something that actually benefits sick people, instead of torturing and killing us on a normal day and then deciding to sacrifice us in a pandemic. No more healthy, abled medical professionals. You're all fired. You can't be trusted. We asked you nicely to stop torturing and murdering us, and you didn't listen, so tough shit. Only sick doctors, only disabled physiotherapists, only batshit psychiatrists. You must be disabled to enter the medical profession. The medical profession has forgotten that it was supposed to effing help us, so we should take it back and center disabled people. Alice in Wonderland is calling. Okay, I think they're missing one of their characters. I don't know who this guy would be. Tweedledee? I mean, he sounds too angry to be Tweedledee or Tweedledum. You know, is he the Queen of Hearts or something? I don't know. It's been forever since I've even cracked open Alice in Wonderland, so I'm probably forgetting a lot of the characters. Maybe he's the walrus. You know, actually, maybe he's the carpenter. Maybe he's either the walrus or the carpenter. I don't know. But this is textbook insanity. Open up a dictionary, go to the entry on insanity, you will see this tweet. Okay? That is how crazy that it is. Let's just take this a few steps at a time, shall we? Doctors are torturing and murdering people? What does that even mean? Does it mean that doctors lose patience? Yes, doctors lose patience. They're fallible. Do some doctors lose patience because of malpractice? Because the doctors, didn't do 100% of what they should have? I'm sure that there are cases. I know that there are some cases like that. But are doctors in general torturing and murdering patients? No. In fact, this is actually one of those. This is one of the reasons that this thought process is so. It's not irritating, because that's too light of a word for it, but it's so aggravating, I suppose, would be a better word for it. It's aggravating because so many doctors get into their fields, whatever it is, whether it's cardiovascular, whether it's brain surgery, whether it's obstetricians, whether it's pediatricians, whether it's psychiatrists. So many doctors get into their field because they have a genuine love of the field. They love their field of study. They love working in it. And because, part and parcel with that, they want to actually help people. They have a desire to help people. Yes, they make a good deal of money Absolutely. They should. They should. First of all, as compensation for all of the sacrifices that they had to make. I mean, I've never been to medical school, but I am going to consider it a safe bet that it is probably one of the hardest things, one of the hardest courses of study that someone can actually go through. I am sure that once you graduate and you actually have that diploma, you've gone through everything, and you actually now are a doctor, you are a brain surgeon, or you are a psychiatrist, or you are a therapist, or something like that, something similar to that. I am sure that you have been put through the ringer multiple times, and I'm sure, since they are human and they are fallible, and they have their crests and their lows, I am sure that there were times when they considered chucking it all and doing something else because it's not worth it. It's too difficult. It's impossible. You can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, but they stuck with it. So just for that, they should make a lot of money. And then because I'm sorry to bring markets and everything into it, but do you want to be a psychiatrist? Do you want to go through all of those years of schooling and suffering because that's what it is, suffering, to learn the necessary skills and the medicines and everything that are needed to treat the mind? Or do you want to go through the schooling so that you can become a surgeon, so you can perform open heart surgery? Or so that you can detect cataracts and other ailments of the eyes, or anything like that? Do you want to take the time and the money and, just lock yourself down for the suffering to do that? Not very many people do. I know that I don't want to. That is not how I see my life going. I do not want to do that with my life. Very few people do. Very few people are made out for that. Very few people even have the desire to do that, which is why they do make a lot of money. Because if something's wrong with the old ticker, everyone wants there to be doctors who can actually operate on it. Either fix the heart or actually do a transplant and put a whole new heart in it. Isn't that, just take a moment and consider that. Isn't that amazing? That is one reason where the 21st century really is marvelous. And one way that that the 21st century is a better time to be alive than in centuries past and in other times and epochs, because we can do that. Before, if something was majorly wrong with your heart, that was it. You might have a little time, but you knew that was more than likely how you were going to die. Now, it is not overblown to say medical miracles. The idea that you can take another person's heart and to put it into your own body and to make it work. It's fantastic. It's something out of a fairy tale, or it's something out of science fiction. It's mind-boggling when you actually sit down and think about it. And that then real people, real men and women are actually doing this, that they study and suffer and sweat and bleed over this so that they can actually help their fellow man. I think that it's wonderful. Sure, there are doctors who are jerks. There are doctors who are not good people. There are doctors who are scums of the earth. Absolutely. But guess what? You're going to find those sorts of people in every profession. Because people are people and people are fallen creatures. I've harped on that point several times. So it's not just the medical profession. Okay? That's just the state of mankind. Sad to say it. So there's that point. But then we get to the really juicy part. The idea that it's time for disabled and sick people to seize the means of medical gatekeeping and control and transform it into something that actually benefits sick people. No more healthy, abled medical professionals. And then went on to say, only sick doctors, only disabled physiotherapists, only batshit psychiatrists. You must be disabled to enter the medical profession. In other words, translation here from the social justice warrior speak that is being blabbed onto here and being vomited onto Twitter, that was vomited onto Twitter. Health is no longer the focal point of medicine. Health is no longer the focal point of medicine. Let's just take one example. Let's when he says only batshit psychiatrists, okay? We'll take that as our example here. Psychiatrists treat the mind. They try to help people with their mental disabilities, however that is. I'll never forget, I've only taken, confession time, I've only taken one psychiatry class, and that was my very first semester of undergraduate. But I have never forgotten that class. It was still one of the best classes I ever took because the professor I had was marvelous. I've actually, when I think about it, I have been very blessed in my life to have wonderful, for the most part, I have just had grade A, top-notch, wonderful professors. People who were experienced, who were experts in their field, and who were just genuinely good people who cared about their students and cared about their fields and cared about excellence and your own flourishing in the field. So, just want to say that. But I've never forgotten that class, never forgotten that professor, and I have never forgotten some of the stories that he told, some of the examples that he gave. And we were talking about abnormal psychology and mental disorders, and he told us a story because he was a licensed psychiatrist, and he had a man who suffered from OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, which I'm sure a lot of people now associate with Tony Shalhoub and his character Monk. Mr. Monk, the TV character, the TV detective that came out, I think, in the early 2000s, Adrian Monk. The show's not on anymore. Only saw the first season. It was okay. And our professor was talking about a patient that he had who had OCD, right? Like Mr. Monk. And the story that our professor told was that his patient, in order to give our professor a visual understanding of what he experienced with OCD, he said, "Doc, I want you to imagine that you have a glass of orange juice and that there's a spoon in the orange juice. And now, with your mind, have the spoon stir the orange juice clockwise." Okay, sure. And the patient then said, "Okay, Doc, now I want you to stop stirring the orange juice clockwise. And then instead, in your mind, again, with your imaginary glass of orange juice, stir it counterclockwise." Like, okay. And then the patient said, "I can't stir it counterclockwise. I can't do it." His mind was trapped into only stirring it one way. He could not stop thinking about it. He could not stop stirring the imaginary glass of orange juice clockwise. He couldn't stop, couldn't change it, couldn't do anything like that. That must be hell on earth to be trapped in that way inside of your own mind. Now, a psychiatrist, again, he is supposed to help people, right? His mind is supposed to be whole. It's not supposed to be broken so that he can go and help minds that are broken, that are incomplete in whatever way, and to help them become complete. That's the whole point of being a doctor. Making whole what is incomplete or fixing what is broken. I mean, real life quantum leap, right? Making right what once went wrong. Here it is. Fixing what is broken. But now, because we have the wonders of intersectionality, only batshit psychiatrists, okay? You can't be a psychiatrist unless you're just as crazy as your parents and patients. Unless you are just as crazy, just as broken, just as incomplete as your patients. Well, wait a second. How in the hell is anyone going to be fixed then? How the hell is anyone going to be cured in that way? Talk about the blind leading the blind. If you have your own mental issues, how are you going to be able to help people who have other mental issues? You're not going to be able to. And that's the gag. Because, as I said just a moment ago, the point now is not health. The point is just validation. The point is justification. This is the hell, the literal hell, that intersectionality has brought upon us. Intersectionality, which was supposed to be able to help pinpoint injustices, which was supposed to allow us to see the world in a new light. Maybe, it was supposed to kind of be a scalpel. Like, because this person is black and a woman, maybe she experiences things, in this way. Maybe we can understand the world a little bit better like this. Let's do it like this. I mean, that was it. In my mind, that was always tenacious at the very best, because I think a lot of people seeing it laid out like that could kind of predict where things were going. And sure enough, what the worst possible scenario has happened. Because now, instead of helping people, instead of actually bringing society back together, all intersectionality has done is actually shatter society. It has shattered it into little bitty pieces, because instead of actually pointing out the commonalities that we have together as people in general, or as the members of a particular civilization, society, culture, and country, intersectionality breaks us. It smashes us and shatters us into all of these different little islands where we have absolutely no commonality with anyone or anything outside of those islands. If you're black, that's the island that you're stuck on. If you are a black trans lesbian, let's say, that is where you are. That little corner of the intersectional chart is where you are. That is where you will stay. No one else can come onto the island with you, and you sure as hell can't go onto the island on anyone else's island, because that's just how the system is set up. You are automatically being oppressed. And now intersectionality has come for health and medicine, because now, extending from body positivity and fat shaming and all that, now being broken, being incomplete, not being whole, not being well, that's not a sign that you need to get better. Okay, as non-judgmental as you make it, that is just a sign that society is trying to force its quote-unquote arbitrary definition of normal onto you. In other words, you are being oppressed. And so in this light, it makes perfect sense why all doctors are bastards here on Twitter would say that medicine is oppressive and doctors are just murderers and torturers, because in trying to heal people, they are invalidating the patient's experiences and subjective understanding of reality, because the doctors are just tyrannically, for lack of a better word, they are tyrannically trying to make these people conform to what society has arbitrarily decided is good and normal. And by white, male, Christian, heteronormative, cisgendered men, then it is automatically oppressive. And therefore, their attempt to conform these people is tyrannical. That's what this would say. Well, now, the obvious result of all this is that there is no medicine. No one can be cured. No one can be made whole. No one can be made well if that's the mentality going forward. Which means that whether this was in the cards in the beginning or not, right? Regardless of what the intentions of the people who originally made intersectionality were, the long and the short of it is that intersectionality as it is now cares more about its own ideological premises than in the actual health of people. It would actually rather see people suffer. by telling them that their suffering makes them unique, that their suffering, is normal, and that trying to get better is what's abnormal. Trying to get better is what is oppressive. And that's where intersectionality is oppressive, because it wants to keep people on these tiny little islands where suffering is made normal, because suffering makes you a victim, and victimhood is power. Instead of actually trying to work to make people flourish in their lives to the best of their ability. That's what intersectionality has become. And it's perfectly illustrated in those 3 tweets that came out on April 6th that I read to you by the guy who calls himself All Doctors Are Bastards, which makes me think that he has some serious psychological issues that he himself should confront and get help for. So I don't know who he is, where he is. If he somehow stumbles upon this video by some small quirk of fate, then that's my advice. But anyway, gang, that about wraps it up for this week. Continue to stay safe, to stay healthy, and most importantly, stay sane. I will chat at you later. Ciao.